All right. How you guys doing? Hello. First of all, how are you? I hope you're having a great part of your day. Now, I've been thinking for some time about sitting down and doing a video like this. Sort of a PSA, an insider's look into esports, what esports is, and really taking the people that are on the outside of the scene and sort of broadening how they look at the space itself. So if you have anybody that, parents, friends, anyone that you think needs to know, especially if you're in the esports circle, if they're not, something like that, where maybe it would be beneficial for them to see something like this to really broaden their spectrum in esports, pause this video right now, go get them, explain to them what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to rant a little bit and just sort of throw stuff that I have personally experienced. A little bit about me. Personally, I have obviously put videos on YouTube for half a decade or so. I stream on Twitch. That's a more recent thing that I've picked up. But on top of that, I've also been a competitive gamer at a professional level. So that's a little bit about me. And I don't want that to come off as though I'm going to be pro esports or anti esports. I'm really going to try to come as close to down the middle as I can and just sort of give you a broadening look at what esports is and, answer some questions that a lot of people have. So if that's something you're into, then stick around. This might be a long video. If you're not, well, then go click on something else. All right. We're going to talk about a few specific things. Esports, by the facts, comparing viewership numbers and whatnot, as well as sustainability as a profession. That portion of the talk is really for people that are looking to either get into it or, it's just numbers that you can look at it in a good way. So what you're looking at right now is actually an esports venue. These guys, this is actually an arena that they're in right now, probably a basketball arena by the looks of it, by the seating arrangement. These guys are playing a particular game called League of Legends, one of the biggest games in the world right now. Player base wise, it is the biggest game in the world. Its esports scene is huge. They have grand prizes for winning, championship prizes totaling well into the millions. And I don't mean like a million, I'm talking like 11 million, right? So, for those that didn't know that, that's a big fact for you to look at. The prize pools in esports have actually more than doubled in recent years as the scene has expanded. In fact, if you want to take a look with me at that's a picture of me. There it is. We'll get to me in a minute. Get to more about me. This is sort of an esports by the numbers. If you want to look at it, you can just sort of read that if you can. It really just looks at gamers and esports enthusiasts, so you get an idea of how big of player base that we're not just player base, a fan space that we're talking about. We're not talking about people in coffee shops holding tournaments anymore. This is look at it. There's just things that fill arenas. League of Legends, the same game you're looking at, their Worlds a couple of years ago actually was held in a stadium overseas. 56,000 people attended that and packed that stadium. They sold that out. Looking on the player side now that you know that, on average, esports tournaments actually have more viewers than NHL hockey games. And that they also rival things like American football, the NFL. They rival viewership numbers. If you take a look into the financial side of it, I've already talked about the fact that they have prize pools well into the millions. They have what is called WESA, W-E-S-A. It's basically like a workers' union, but for players. It's sort of like the people that look after the players, make sure they're being treated fairly and that they follow, organizations are following a certain set of rules to not take advantage of their players. Players, for those that don't know, if you're a professional video game player, as odd as that must sound to some of you people, especially people that are just joining me in this talk, As weird as that sounds, there are people that play professional video games, sort of like professional athletes, professional sports players. You know, when you think of traditional sports, this is the same sort of thing, and I want you to throw away the misconception of gamers and look at this in a very, very sterical, is that the word I'm looking for? Sterical environment. You need to look at this not as a bunch of people at, maybe a high school that play video games together. This is a professional level thing. These players get salaries well into the $100,000s a year. On top of that, they also get endorsements, sort of like sports players get maybe deodorant endorsements. These guys get keyboard endorsements, or they get mice pad with their names on them. They sell merchandise. So when you look at it by the numbers, esports players, the top tier ones, make just as much as top tier sports athletes in some of the biggest sports realms. I think one of the biggest things people need to look at, it is esports. This is a sport. As hard as it is for people to look at that, these are athletes. People that spend 8-10 hours a day honing their craft at something. These are experts in their field. And whereas a lot of people pawn it off as video games, it really isn't. If you look at the analogy I like to draw is football. You can really try this analogy with any sport, but football, it's a bigger spectrum, as you can see by the numbers here. It is a huge fan base, and everyone in the United States, and a lot of people know what the game is, so I can talk to a large audience with this comparison. I'll finally get to it now. People that play football 10 hours a day, they practice, they hone their craft, they are experts in their field, and they get paid very well to do so with a large viewer base. On the flip side, esports is the exact same thing. There takes, I would argue, more thought. It's more on the thoughtful side, the mental side, as opposed to physical side in this particular comparison, but there is a lot of thinking involved to be the best. A lot of reaction time, that sort of stuff, to be a professional top-tier esports player. It's not just a thing that anyone can get into. I mean, the barrier to entry is less where, if you look at the football system, you usually go to college, and there's that sort of breeding system. And a lot of teams, especially if you look at games, the best example is Rainbow Six Siege, a newer game to the esports genre, but they do have academy teams. Or League of Legends, the game you're looking at, they have college teams. And if, college teams, they bring them up to the pro teams, the people that get to play on these massive arenas for millions and millions of dollars. So that's just a financial sort of look into it. The people that say esports players don't make as much as sports players, I think, have the numbers misconstrued. Now, I don't want to come off saying that everybody makes this, because just like there are lower tier athletes, dare I say that, the second string kicker for the Chicago Bears does not make as much as the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, right? So there's a similar system like that in anything, obviously, but esports has that as well. If you have an esport, let's say Call of Duty's a good one, it's not as big as League of Legends, so their prize pools are smaller. I think they host $1 million tournaments as opposed to $11 million tournaments, right? So there's something to be said for that too. And the player salaries are a little less. You have to fit within your space. Thankfully, in recent years, sponsors, people like Chipotle, Arby's, fast food places, as well as outside industries have come in and pumped a lot of money, advertising dollars, into the space, which has caused a rapid expansion in terms of player salaries, as well as tournament winnings have drastically changed in just a couple of years. For those that still are hung up on esports as a sport, let me just throw it at you this way. Call of Duty was held at the X Games 2 years in a row. X Games, obviously a place where they hold sporting events. So, this is not something that is, it is still a very new thing, and it's growing, but it is not a pipe dream anymore. And if I could talk personally just for a second now, my time as a professional video game player, don't get it mistaken, I did not play in arenas like this. I did not compete for $11 million, so I cannot speak to you in that capacity, but I can talk to you as a guy who is at the top of his field. That field being Call of Duty, which is why I used that as a secondary example earlier. You know, you step into the space, and for those that really want to look at how to get started, you obviously play. You get yourself out there. You're a free agent and whatnot, and hopefully a lesser team or maybe a major team will come and look at you and pick you up, right? So when you look at it from a player perspective or a wanting to be player perspective, I think a lot of questions are asked right away. You know, is this a sustainable source of income? You know, because a lot of esports players, just like a lot of sports players, are young. And when you get older, your reaction time slows down and you do have to retire. You know, it's just like football. You can't do it forever. So there is a question of, is it, you know, how feasible is it? How sustainable is it? And that sort of thing. Feasibility, it's just like any other sport, and it's just like anything else where you want to be the top of your field, whether that be in education, manufacturing, sports, esports, anything like that. To be the best, obviously you need to put in the time to do something like that, and you have to really, really want it and be willing to throw away anything and work your hardest at it. So the feasibility, can it happen? Is it a pipe dream? No. It is actually a rather feasible thing, especially in the particular bubble that we're in now, where rapid expansion is happening. We are sort of past the scene where anybody can do it and really into the cream of the crop. So you do have to be very good at what you do to even be looked at, and by even academy teams if you're looking towards games like Rainbow Six Siege. But feasibility, sustainability is where I'm at. I'm sorry. Sustainability. Is it a reasonable statement for you to make a living playing video games in today's world? Yes. Backed by all the numbers that I've said beforehand, even as a lesser player on a lesser team. I know guys that play in lesser esports that still make a very good living at this. Long term, could you maybe put enough aside to retire? It depends on the game you play. League of Legends, these guys make $11 million for top prize. Of course, they still get paid to be there, sponsorships, everything like that. It is very feasible that even people that don't win these tournaments are into the millions for their salaries. And of course, you can retire on that if you spend your money correctly. Is it also a large step to say that you will need to do something after esports? Yes. I do. Personally, I am in college right now to be a music education major. And for the people that say, oh, well, this is going to fizzle out and I'm going to need to go get a regular job, the same can be said for people in football, right? Football players, they go to college for football, they play professional football, and then their career ends. They have to find something else to do. Usually they go to, casting, analyst, something like that. A lot of esports players, past esports players have come into that capacity. Thankfully, esports players also have the platform of social media, where if they put out tips and trick videos on YouTube, or they do a lot with Twitter and advertising that way, they can also build themselves into their own brand, which is a thing that a lot of people don't think about. Going back to my example, I sort of strayed away there. I'm going to come back to it. I started my career as a competitive Call of Duty player. I was not picked up on a pro team at first. I spent a long time just playing the game competitively, hoping that, it'll happen one day, and playing odds to my, advantage. My parents didn't support me. I think I can openly say that. Not that they said I shouldn't do it, because at the time I was also in high school, which is the perfect time to do this sort of thing. You've got that ability to look towards your future, but also, have the capacity to pursue something like this. A lot of leagues you have to be 18 or older to play in, but there are still some that you don't, and you can get a really good footing before you become 18. So it is a very strong thing that you will get picked up by a pro team. I was not right away. I really wasn't. I'll be 100% honest that I was not. It took me well into my career to be picked up by a pro team and to play professionally. And that was something that I think I need to stress to people, that it was my job to play video games every day. That statement doesn't make sense. Let me reword that to you in a way that might make sense to older generation people that are listening. It was my job every day to go to work and to be the best at something. And it was cutthroat. You don't get first place, you don't get paid. So, of course, you strive and you try to achieve as much as anybody else can. I suppose it's at this point that I can pull up the picture of myself, right? It's only poetic in that way. I play for Ascension Esports. I still do, despite the fact that I'm a retired player and that I go to college. I'm a regular guy. I'm just a regular guy now. I still have ties with that team. It's a lesser-known team on the PC, so don't let me pretend like I'm out here some sort of expert, right? Or some sort of top tier playing in stadiums. I'm the best in the world. I'm very good at what I do, or what I did, I suppose. I don't think I need to go into stats or anything because that's not relevant to this particular talk. If you want to look them up, you're welcome to. But that's besides the point. Looking outside of esports, because so far the last 15 minutes I've hammered home why it is feasible to do esports. I have done it, that sort of stuff. And I think going beyond the game itself, esports or my time as a professional player, whoops, I just slipped out of my chair there, it's been more about the game. It has taught me more about being a better person, a better friend, how to manage my time better than I had expected it to. I had to play 40 hours a week, every week. Didn't matter if I had a tournament or not, I had to, because it was my job to. It taught accountability. If I didn't, I would get talked to about that. My game would be lesser. I'd show up to a tournament, and if I lost, then accountability needs to be had there. So it teaches that. It teaches accountability. It teaches time management because you have to put in the hours. I hate to break it to you, but you cannot put in 10 hours a week and expect to be at a level where you will get paid to do this. It simply cannot happen, especially with prize pools raising so much and competition becoming even more cutthroat. That simply will not do. Back in the day, football players, they used to drink afterwards. Nowadays, they're full-time athletes. It's the same sort of progression in esports, a little bit quicker, I will admit. But it's the same sort of progression. So you cannot expect to be playing 10 hours a week and getting a paying contract. It simply will not happen. Unless you schmooze your way into some lesser team. That's besides the point, though. It taught me so much more than that. It taught me how to be a better person. It taught me to be proud of myself, proud of my accomplishments, proud of the fact that even though it doesn't get to go forever, I got to do it. I can say for the rest of my life that at one time I was the best in the world at something. No matter how big or small it is, the fact that that statement gets to come out of my mouth is something that very few people get to have. And it is something that I think people should strive for more. I think, unfortunately, a lot of, especially in this particular genre, parents crush people's, future players' dreams, because they don't understand how, what they're getting into. It is exactly like a regular sport. Keep that in mind. Anytime you hear esports, just take the E off of it. Whoever you're talking to, whoever you brought in to listen to this, or whoever you're listening to this with, wants to be a professional sports player. Right? If you look at it that way, and I think you take some of the misconceptions about Cheeto eating losers that don't have any social interaction, that are just going to give up on the world and work at McDonald's the rest of their life, I think you need to throw that out of the way and understand that we are professionals. And we are trying to forward this space in a way to make it even more accessible to more people. So, with that said, let me wrap back around to more of my experiences, right? I talked about being a better person, being a better friend, and all those things are incredibly true. Accountability. I also think that, if you're in, let's say, late high school, early college, I think your window to pursue something like this is really good. You're in college, you've got classes, you've obviously got breaks in between. You have the time to do something like that. And I'm not saying that everybody can do it, because not everybody can. But I'm saying that the naysayers need to give people a chance. I guess is really what I'm getting at, and educate themselves. Unfortunately, I meet a lot of people that when I introduce myself, it's okay, hello, I'm Billy. Oh, Billy, what'd you do for a job? Well, I was a professional video game player. They laugh. They don't understand. And they pass it off as a nothing when really they shouldn't. It is a weird statement to say, but it is not an outlandish thing in today's world. If you were educated on it, if you actually take the time to educate yourself on a subject like this, more so than even I have. I've read a lot of really great papers about this. I have actually myself written a paper on this particular subject. And I think that if you look at it objectively, of course I am pro esports as much as I try to be in the middle. And on that note, let me just take a break from all that and let me address some concerns more so than I have earlier. Some real in-depth ones pointed at naysayers, right? A lot of people will, use the phrase "wake up to reality." This isn't a thing, and it is. And I don't want to come off as arrogant in that statement, or that I'm looking down on you in a way, but it simply is. And to say that we're living in this world that it doesn't exist, the picture behind you isn't Photoshop, boys and girls. This is a real photo of a real event that happens. This is a real thing. This isn't a joke. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that getting into esports is a bit of a trick. I think you need to surround yourself with people that do know. Read up, educate yourself on the subject, and also, go to pro players. Go to resources in the scene that can help you widen your horizons as far as getting into the scene. Because you don't just play video games, and like pub lobbies. The next thing you know, you're on this stage. It simply doesn't happen. There's a lot of, you're an athlete, and you should treat yourself as one. You need to sign contracts, and you need to pass drug tests and whatnot. You need to hold yourself to an incredibly high standard, and you need to surround yourself with people that can make that happen. There are a lot of great organizations out there, a lot of great places to start if you're looking into getting into something like that. Go to an ESA or MLG, although I wouldn't really pick MLG nowadays the way it's been going. But, ESL, places like that is a good place to start. Go for tournaments is a great place to start. You can get noticed that way. You can build on your skill set and really understand what it takes to be a player at this level. Now, again, don't think for a second that I was the guy in the arena on television, because I wasn't. But I also did get to do this for a job, and it now helps pay for my college. And for me to move on and live a great life with esports still in it, just not as a professional player. So I hope you enjoyed this talk. It was a ramble, like I said it would be. And I'm sure there's a lot of points that I wish I could say, and I'll probably make another video on this to sum up those points. But I thank you so much for those that made it to the almost 24-minute marker. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And if you have any questions, leave a comment down below, all right? Or message me, go to Twitter, DM me, something like that. I will be happy to answer your questions or get you in contact with someone who can answer your questions. So we're about growing the space. Again, if you have someone, maybe you want to be a pro player and your parents say it's bad, or you have people at school maybe, or something like that, or you have someone that you think could do this, send them a video like this, send them this video, hopefully, right? And hopefully this can broaden your horizons as far as what esports is. Do a little looking at yourself before you start naysaying it, and have an open mind. And with that said, I thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.